What's up? Welcome in. Hoge and Jahns with you from Halas Hall.
Live from the Decatur room.
Yes, which used to be the defensive backs room.
The memories.
There used to be a ball back there that they could punch on their way in and out of the room.
Now there is a sign indicating that you're in the Decatur room. Can you see it over my left shoulder? You're watching on YouTube. I once interviewed Bryce Callahan, Ed Donatel.
Okay.
About Bryce Callahan in this room. Looked a lot different back then, but this was it.
Fun fact, bringing some of our, not really a fact, it's an opinion, and maybe it's not even fun. Going back to a few years ago, those of you who've been listening to this podcast for a while know our opinions on Decatur. And our trip down there. We once did a podcast next to some porta potties down in Decatur. So I prefer the Decatur room.
Nothing against Decatur specifically. It was having to drive down to Decatur for 15 minutes with Ryan Pace.
Yes, and through some tornadoes in the area, and
my car issues. Yes.
It was not a fun trip. This trip in the Decatur room has been a little bit better, and it is our annual conversation with the Bears general manager, which we're very happy to continue since the Bears did change GMs in the offseason. But we thank the Bears for letting this happen again, as we used to talk to Ryan Pace every year during training camp. The only time it wasn't early in training camp was the year that Roquan Smith held out of training camp, and then they ended up trading for Khalil Mack, and that conversation happened later in August. Technically, this is September now as we record this and get ready for the season.
It's September 1st there, bud.
Yep. Regardless, we're happy to have the GM on again. So I think we should just dive into it. About a 20-minute conversation with Ryan Poles today. Touched on a number of different topics. We'll let you hear it, including some confirmation on some important news that we had speculated on about what he was listening to in a certain press box. So here it is. We'll come back after the conversation with some thoughts on some things that were said. But here he is, Ryan Poles. Okay, so the first thing we have to ask you, Ryan, there's a shot of you in Seattle in the press box with some earbuds in, and we've been debating what you were listening to, and we just assume it was the Hoge Jahns podcast. So can you just confirm that for us?
Yes, I was. Okay. It was the podcast that I was listening to.
What do you think?
I knew it. It's good stuff.
Well, how different, though, is that for you? You're sitting there in the press box, and you look up at the TV, there I am again.
Yeah, that was way too much, by the way. It was super awkward.
Yes.
And then I could feel people behind me starting to move and get out of the shot. But
Don't worry, when the regular season starts, it's only a 2-second shot. Right. But when it's the third quarter of a preseason game and there's not much else to talk about, that's what they do.
I feel like they did a whole segment on what you were thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they showed Aaron Clark once.
Yes.
Saying it was you. That was actually the best part. Well, let's jump into the team a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of eyes on your quarterback throughout the month, and how he's, at least I think the way we've talked about it a lot, is seemingly improved each week within this system.
Yeah.
What has impressed you the most about just the leaps that Justin's taken?
Yeah, I think he's starting to look and feel comfortable. As I mentioned before, early on, when we all can imagine, especially at that position, you have a new coaching staff, you have a new scheme, right? So you're trying to, the calls are coming in, and you have to regurgitate that, and then you have to think about exactly what's that doing. Oh, I got to look at the defense and figure out what they're doing, and it's a lot. So, and at the same time, he's trying to clean up his footwork and his delivery, and it was a lot going on, and he just kept fighting through it. And I think that's one thing, just talking with Luke and the staff, they were really happy with his just determination, work ethic, resilience, just getting through bad days, coming back and have good days. So to go from that discomfort to be really comfortable in that last game was really cool to see.
Take us through the structure maybe you put around him, especially in that quarterback room. You have Andrew Janocko, you have Luke Getzey in the back, Matt Eberflus, head coaches in there every single meeting, and then you have two veteran quarterbacks who have seen this system, been in the system. What did you make of assembling this, and what are your impressions so far before the season here?
Yeah, well, I'll speak on just what I had to touch, and that's just the quarterback room in terms of the players. because Luke he had a system and how they were going to coach and install everything. So I really don't have much to say on that part, but the guys in the room is important, and that's something I picked up from Coach Reed. Like, he was very specific on the guys that he had in the room, and it's a very tight room. They spend a lot of time in that room. That's the one. I mean, there's more work going on in that room than anywhere else. So the cool thing with Trevor is just his background, right? He's played a bunch of games, but also he's been with Peyton. He's been with Drew Brees. He's been with guys that have played at a really high level, and he's able to give insight on how to approach the game, how to approach the week, and give those little nuances on how to get better and what to look for and grow in a new system and everything like that. So I've been really happy with the guidance in that room in general.
What has just watching, we have the benefit of seeing what was here before, I guess, and the way things were done and how some things have been different. One of the things that's really stood out to me, I guess, is I don't know, the attention to detail in practice. Mm-hmm. One of the examples that we talked about a couple weeks ago was in a quarterback drill you guys do, where it's actually a handoff and then Fields rolls out, or the quarterback, whoever it is, rolls out, and then you toss him an extra ball and he gets like a throw out of it too, like stealing reps like that. Just little things like that. How much of that is either your coaching staff's background, stuff that and how much of that was an emphasis when you guys came in here this offseason and started getting the ball rolling? Yeah,
I think that's all coaching. That's all coaching. It's maximizing every rep to get better. And that's a lot of Luke, and actually just having flashbacks. Like, I've seen clips of in Green Bay, they would do something similar. So he's bringing his knowledge and his experience and pouring into those quarterbacks. But in general, I think it speaks volumes on Coach Eberflus as well. I knew that just from my research, is just being really, really detailed on top of it, maximizing practice time, and he's done that, and it's really cool to see. I mean, it's been sharp in terms of the operation and the teaching moments.
You had this evaluation of Justin before you got here, and then you get the job. I'm curious, how has it evolved, changed? Maybe how has your confidence grown now that you've seen him have the ups and downs in camps? You've seen him play 3 preseason games, or part of 3 preseason games. How has your confidence in him grown from the point you got the job until now?
Yeah, I think I spoke on this a long time ago, maybe intro, but like early on, you just look for flashes. So when I came in here and I was preparing to come in here, I was watching tape, and you could see the flashes. You saw more flashes in college, but for the setup that he had last year, you saw the flashes, but it wasn't consistent. There's a lot going on. That was choppy, but now you're starting to see the flashes more consistently. Like, that game was a perfect example of seeing not only from in the pocket, but getting outside, being patient, threatening with his athletic ability, but then, throwing it as he creates pressure, and defensive players have to make decisions on what they're going to do. So I think the amount of flashes has risen, and he's starting to look comfortable and be more productive. So I'm excited with him kind of getting into the flow. And I think the scheme's been important too. He looks comfortable when he gets out and he's on the run. And, hopefully we see more of that when the lights come on.
How much stock should really be put into what we saw in the preseason? You pull the numbers from the 3 games, and it looks like a great one game if it were put all smashed together. Right. But as a talent evaluator, what specifically are you looking at that matters most, I guess, from those reps?
Yeah, I think it's almost play-by-play for the preseason, where, when you get in the regular season, you got to look at the whole performance, then the end result, if you win or lose. So really it's evaluating those plays on their own. So I don't really go too crazy about the overall stats at the end of the game, or even, the wins and losses. You always want to win. It's just being competitive. It feels way better leaving even a preseason game a winner than a loser. But I think we just look at each play and his development. I think it's been really cool to see how far he's come.
When you see him take hits in the preseason, I'm curious.
It drives me nuts.
Yeah. So, how, your anticipation for the guys to go, back him up, to help him. How are you, timing these guys? How do you, who's going to be there first? How much are you watching those linemen run to his defense when he takes those sliding late hits?
Yeah, I almost, pounded the table, just angry, because I don't know why he continues to get these. But, no, you look at the reaction, and I think it's more of, how they feel about him, and that's their guy, and they're going to have his back. So I actually thought that was a really cool thing that when that happened, you could see that wave of players coming behind, like, that's our guy. You don't touch him like that, and it sets the tone. And Justin feels that, right? I mean, to have guys have your back to, correct something that was done wrong to him is a really cool thing. So I think they get it. They have the right mentality going into the season.
Well, for being honest, that didn't always happen last year. But one of the guys that you did see clearly on film last year on one of those plays, run to him and pick him up, was Teven Jenkins.
Yeah.
What has help us fill in some of the gaps here of how his camp has gone? Because in all the years we've covered this team, I don't know that I've seen a more remarkable turnaround from like the first couple weeks of somebody's camp to how it ended. What happened?
Yeah, so it actually kind of blew my mind a little bit. So he's out for a few days, and all of a sudden there's like trade rumors floating around, and I hadn't called anybody. But what happens in the league is people call you because there's rumors floating around. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, evaluating Tevin. Like, we're seeing how he does. And so his move from tackle to guard, he's doing a good job, and we're happy about it. We got to the preseason games to see what it would look like, and he's doing good. And he is gifted. But what I love the most is his finish, his strain, his aggressive style that he's playing with right now, and we hope he keeps it up.
So you have this conversation with Tevin. Do you tell him, hey, forget about those rumors. Like, you have a home here. We like what you're doing at guard. And then, like, how does he respond to that? Because he's brought that up a couple of times about finding a home, working at guard. Like, how did he respond to, your messages to him?
He definitely appreciated the communication. And, I was asked before, like, what can you improve? Like, I told him, like, I can improve on, communicating better. And he said, I can communicate better myself too. But we got on the same page, and it's good. He's doing a good job. I'm proud of him. I told him that. So,
as a former offensive lineman, can you just take us through maybe the nuances of how difficult that transition is, especially in a condensed period of time to go from tackle to guard, and what you're seeing up front? Yeah,
there's different challenges. You play more on the island at tackle. You have a different type of athlete coming at you. It's weird because you actually have a little bit more time, is what it feels like. And then when you kick further inside, you have less time and you have to react and feel things. But then you have bigger bodies trying to run through you, also wiggle, on your edges. So it's just different style. And I think the biggest thing is just reacting faster because things happen faster inside. But you can tell his strength, his power, his length. That's where it really benefits him in that position.
So I know when you drafted Braxton Jones, you felt like he's somebody who could develop into a starter for you at left tackle. That has happened. I mean, it honestly happened by the time OTAs were over. Right. Like the way you guys threw him out there so quickly. What you mentioned today in the press conference that's blown you away, surprised you a little bit. What was it that really stood out right away? Like, hey, this might happen a lot faster than we thought.
Yeah, what stood out to me, just obviously I've played the position, so I just love watching it, and it's like a passion. I think for anyone that's played O-line, you look at things different. But so there's feet and hands, right? You can have quick feet, and then you can have length and a good punch. And then the other piece of that, especially being young, is patience and when to throw your hands, but also can your feet react. And then the last part is, can you strain to correct and finish when things don't go right? Can you recover? So what stood out to me first was his patience with his hands. And I was like, that's pretty good, right? So then there's kind of boxes you got to check. It's OTAs, right? It's just helmets. But then the pads come on. What happens when someone tries to go right down your middle? Do you have the anchor? Can you drop anchor? Do you have the ankle flexibility? Can you drop and strain to finish? And he's starting to show that when pads come on. And then it's guys choose one or the other way, speed or power, and then they start to flex both of them. And then how do you react from that? So his ability just to react to it, show that he's got enough anchor, his patience with hands for those guys that have speed rush. He just continues to check those boxes. Now, I said we got some big dogs coming in here early, and we're going to see how he responds to it. And I think the most important piece is the short memory. Can you get beat? and then come back, or do you curl up? So that's going to be the next challenge for him, but I'm stoked on his development so far.
Do you have any stories of like how you found him in the scouting process? I mean, this is a guy who played at a school. I'm not even sure I knew they had a program. And I think they went 1-10 last year, if I have that right. How'd you pull a week one starting left tackle out of that?
Yeah, I think we look for, so the process goes all the way back to like right now, all of our scouts are on the road and they're looking for talent. And then you look for a couple of things: physical traits, football character, and, personal character. And there's prototypes. There's guys with certain length, foot quickness, and then they go to the combine and you really get to see them test out what do the numbers look like. And then you pair that with the tape. And he had a lot of the physical traits. He had length, he had feet, he was athletic, he was a lean guy, and he was strong. So that's kind of some of the boxes you look to take chances on a guy and see if you can develop him. And sometimes it develops fast, and sometimes it's a little bit slower. And for Braxton, he's been developing pretty fast.
So when you're up in the press box listening to Hoge Jahns and you're watching your rookies perform so well in the preseason, like Brisker against the Chiefs. Gordon finally comes in against Seattle, had some up and down moments, but he got better by his third game. How excited are you by what you're seeing from Brisker, Gordon, Braxton Jones? I mean, Jack Sanborn, an undrafted guy, is out there making plays. These young guys, that's your first draft class. Mm-hmm. I mean, the excitement's got to be there for you, right?
Oh, for sure. We watch tape as a group sometimes, and we smile because those guys they're flashing, and the flashes just keep coming. And the more guys that we can have and keep here that are homegrown, like the better off we'll be. And we're excited. And it just confirms that our process is good, that our evaluators are good. And if we continue to do this over a long period of time, we're going to be involved with something special.
How much does an undrafted guy, Sanborn, even like a 7th round pick in Elijah Hicks, really have to stand out? Not only to make your 53-man roster right away, but then make it through the waiver process to still be on the active roster. How much do they have to stand out to you and your staff? Yeah,
they got to stand out. I think the part that we look for too, it's how do you buy time to develop, right? So if you're not the starter, you're not first, you're not second or third, how can you stick? Well, it's special teams. So those guys, Hicks, Sanborn, they stood out on special teams, and that buys them time to continue to develop on the active roster. So that combination is always strong. And then there's versatility too. Can you play multiple positions? How much can you do? And then you put all that together, and you can buy yourself time to stick around and continue to get better.
Did you know when you hired Matt Eberflus that he was so willing to play young guys? Was that something you guys talked about, or did that just kind of end up being a good fit with what the situation is this year?
Yeah, no, I knew he was like that. That's part of the interview process, and there's a common connection. Like Chris Ballard, the GM, we're close, so I had some insight to that, and I know his approach. I think they had a claim period that was very similar to us in 2017, which stresses your coaches out because they have to get those guys up and running quickly, and a lot of times they're young. So I kind of knew that about him, but then he's just exceeded expectations with his openness to do that, his teaching techniques, what he really presses his coaches to continue to teach and develop. And we have a developmental mindset through and through this entire organization.
What's the waiver claim process? You mentioned you guys went into your draft room. That's how serious it got for you guys this year.
Yeah.
Are there scouts standing up, and speaking with conviction, or the old cliche of pounding on the table, especially this year?
Yeah.
Where you're kind of reloading your roster. What was it like in that draft room for this?
Yeah, so it starts way before kind of the last few days kicked off. We assign teams to different scouts, and there's multiple scouts to a team, and you watch tape, and you're almost the GM of that team, and you try to project a 53, and then you say, you know what, they're deep here. Are they going to keep 6 linebackers? Or are they going to go 5? Maybe they have 7, and you start to see where guys can shake free. When they make plays, we flash them, and that creates a board. They get graded so that the values, the same as the draft room or the draft board, the values are assigned, and we stack them. And then when it actually happens, we sit there as a group and we watch tape all night. I think we went to about midnight, 1 o'clock, and we prepare for what guys can help us get better, and that's our approach. And I've done it a few times over the years. And obviously, hopefully with success, you move further down and you get less players. Yeah. But this is something I've done before to kick things off and kind of launch, and that's what we did. And I'm excited about the guys we brought in.
Alex Leatherwood kind of got the headlines of that whole thing, but I want to ask you about Armand Watts. Because he's a guy that I think the day before you're claiming him was projected to be a starter in Minnesota within the division. But obviously I think that's more of a scheme fit type situation, and he ends up here in a defense that he had some success in last year. Tell us what you liked about him and what you think he can bring this defense.
Yeah, so that was a surprise to us. So like I said, with our guys kind of playing GM for each team, he was the guy that was already on and he was going to make it. So that's the name that pops up, and everyone kind of like looks like, seriously, so let's watch him. So we watched everything last year in this current scheme that he was up in Minnesota, and we saw a guy that can add pass rush from inside, and that's important. It's valuable to a defense. So we got excited about that. And then kind of part of the process is, hey, these are the guys we give into the coaches because we want to be lined up, as well. And they got excited about them. So when we got him, we were pumped, and I can't wait to see him, get going.
How much, if it's a surprise, then are you pivoting with because now you have to make a roster move on the back end to clear a spot with somebody who you probably were expecting to keep then? Explain that side of it. Is that an unexpected move then when you have to move on from, and it ended up being Tonga? Yeah,
and that's probably the everyone talks about the high volume cut down day is hard. To me, the second day is the hardest because there's a glimmer of hope. You kind of made it through that, and then that happens. So that's a very difficult conversation. But I think this was a chance to just increase our pass rush, and I think it's going to benefit us in the long term.
I'm not going to ask you to go in detail about how things played out with Roquan Smith, but just like generally speaking, the value of that weak side linebacker in this defense. Like, where do you see it? How do you see him, or how do you see that position ranked against maybe some of the more premier positions?
For this defense, it's very important. But so are, corners, DTs, pass rushers. But they're all important, and he plays one of them. And, I'm excited for him. I think he's going to have a really good year, especially in this scheme.
All right, I'm not sure if I've ever seen you smile in a press conference as big as you did when you were asked about Matt Eberflus today.
Yeah. Or Larry Borum.
Yeah, Larry Borum was another one.
Line talk.
Yes.
But obviously there's something there that's genuine that I mean, you really feel good about the head coach going into this season. I guess explain to us that excitement, which I'm sure is based on everything you've seen up to this point, really.
Yeah. It confirms, like, on a daily basis, what I saw in the very beginning. And I got asked that question a lot. And obviously we got to go in and we got to win games and all that. But it was like, why did you pick Matt Eberflus? And my response was his leadership. And I think you got to have that poise, that command, but also the respect for players. And I talk about being able to communicate with the guys and push, but also, not be a jerk, but also not be soft and fluffy where everything flies. That middle ground's really hard to find. And that's why I thought he was the right guy. And it gets confirmed, on a daily basis on how he approaches practice, to our meetings, to our scheduling, how he treats people with respect, just how he moves around the building. And I'm excited.
Everything seems very just purposeful, not at whim. Like, even there was one of the practices in the Walter Payton Center. This stood out to me, where there was a 3-station drill for fumble recoveries and what happens after that fumble is caused and what everybody does after that in terms of blocking and stuff like that. Like, drills like that. Like, I've never seen anything like that in 10 plus years covering this team. Like, what does that do for you, especially, in light of everything you just said about Matt Eberflus? Yeah,
I think you try to win those like little parts of the game that a lot of people don't think about. Just simply jumping on a fumble. Like, I'm sure I don't have the numbers, but a turnover is a big deal in a game.
Yeah.
So literally jumping on a football can change the outcome of a game. So why not practice that at a high level? And that's what he does with kind of all of those things. How do you strip the ball? How do you hold on to the ball the right way? Just the opposite way. So his approach is really good, and all the coaches are excellent.
Everybody was in that drill, but like the quarterbacks and like some offensive linemen.
Yeah.
Like that was something.
Yep.
I'll end it with this because it's kind of along those lines. But look, at the end of the day, you need to have a talented football team to win Super Bowls in the NFL. But as you embark on this first year through what you're building here, what can just a fundamentally well-coached football team that creates takeaways, that does those little things, like how much success can that team have in this league the way you have it right now with this roster?
Yeah, I believe that if we play the right way, those little details, taking care of the football, tackling, playing hard, catching the football, like those little things I do think go a long way, and we have enough talent to be successful this year and continue to get better. Our goal is always to win to the division, and so we're going to strive to do that. But I definitely know that doing things the right way is going to help more than it's going to hurt. So that's what we're going to do, and we'll see how everything plays out.
So are you looking forward to hearing yourself on this podcast as you hit the road to
Yes.
scout college games?
Yep. I will. I'll be listening.
Colorado TCU, maybe it won't be a 5-minute shot of you in the press box. Hopefully you're not even being seen there. That's good. Yep. Hey, thanks so much for doing this. We appreciate it. Can't wait to see the team get out there on September 11th against the 49ers. It's going to be fun.
Awesome. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right.
Thanks. All right, Johnsy. GM combo in the books. What'd you think?
Let's start with Tevin Jenkins.
Yeah.
The Bears weren't calling around. The trade rumors did not start with him. Him being Ryan Poles, so with them being the Chicago Bears, they feel like they have something here with Teven Jenkins at right guard. I thought he made that pretty clear in the press conference earlier and then here with us.
Yeah, and I also appreciated, too, him admitting that the communication probably could have been better, because that's something we've talked about on this podcast over the last month, from how it was handled at the beginning to even talking to Tevin in his locker a couple days ago and him still seeming like, here's a conversation you think is going to be, hey, dude, you made it. You're a starter. Congrats. And it's like, why does he still feel like he's on the bubble? And so I think that got cleared up today, both in the press conference and then in this conversation too that we had with them. Not only the trade rumors, but the fact that now I think there's some peace of mind and Tevin can really run with this.
I think like your first thought is like, what took so long? But I think it's a reminder of how busy things get at this time of year for players, from meeting to meeting to meeting, to what he said about being in the draft room, going through the waiver process.
Yeah.
So if that conversation had to wait a little bit, I think you understand that a bit.
That part was that stood out to me, not only in the press conference earlier, but him just talking about Armon Watts, and like they didn't expect him to be available, and now it's like, oh, we gotta jump
We
back
have to
in
watch
there.
more tape to midnight.
Yeah, and they did that. I mean, the process here has been meticulous, and again, they're still. It's still not a great thing when you have to you set your 53 and you got to go out and be like, we still need these 6 guys. I mean, it still is a reminder of how far away they probably are, but it's still hearing the process and the way they're going about it, I think is encouraging for the future as they really try to. He's not lying when he says they are constantly looking to add guys. Anybody, if you can help this team and you're available, we can get you. They're going to try.
Well, I thought you heard the GM himself acknowledge that process, the reality of that process. They were 7th in the waiver wire claim process. So, of course, you're going to have a better chance than if you were 31st or 32nd. But you want to be 31st or 32nd.
Yeah.
He said that, but this is where they're at. I think he's made it pretty clear. He's been pretty clear since day one that this isn't just a quick turnaround. Like, they're not doing this with a quick turnaround in mind. They want to set a foundation here, and it's going to take a few years, 2 or 3 years, before they really have pieces in place that they trust and have faith in where this thing takes off.
Another thing that really stands out to me from our conversation today that I think matters a lot, actually, is the confidence that is being exuded in the head coach, the fit that there appears to be between the GM and the head coach is a hell of a lot clearer and more positive than it was the last time the Bears tried to hit the reset button and start over. Because that's no guarantee that things can change. Things do change when you lose football
You're talking about
games.
the John Fox, Ryan Pace partnership, which felt awkward from the beginning.
It felt forced. Yes, they said nice things about each other, but you could tell whether it's the smile on his face in the press conference today or just what he told us, that there is a confidence that, or another way to put it is, he clearly doesn't have any doubt that he hired the right guy. And I think if you gave Ryan Pace some truth serum, 6 months into that whole deal, there's at least probably some questioning going on of, is this really the right guy to do what we're trying to do here?
Can we look? They haven't played a game, but maybe at least us in this podcast, I think we've been pretty consistent with
What are you
this.
talking about? They're 3-0.
Yes. Well, okay. Even the man himself said to take it easy on that, but let's not mock the hits process. And I get that like certain things like that produce, some eye rolling, and I get it. But you coach yourself. The intangibles that come with the coach, the messaging, the consistent messaging, the increased hustle you can get with that consistent messaging, it's meaningful in all levels of football. That type of coaching matters. It endears yourself to certain players. It frustrates others, and they don't become part of your team. But that's where the Bears are at right now. And I don't know if I'm making too much of that, but I think this hits philosophy, especially for like a year one rebuild, is exactly what you want to find out who fits your culture as opposed to what we've covered in the past.
Right, and there's probably going to be growing pains because of it. You're already seeing guys go on IR. I have a feeling that how hard that they've practiced since may limit their depth as the season goes on. And there's probably going to be some growing pains with that. But I think in their minds, it's worth that pain right now to weed out the guys who really belong here, who are embracing it, who are buying in. And by the way, that seems to be most of the people that are here.
Yeah.
I think that buy-in has been there. So Does it result in more injuries this year? I think that's a possibility, but maybe they can back off next year or the year after that once that foundation has been set, because that's really what's most important right now.
Well, once your leaders are established and they lead the way. If we're going to compare this to the Lovie Smith era, because there are a lot of parallels between the two, he had his leaders by year 2 or 3. He had his Brian Urlachers, Lance Briggs, Olin Kreutzes in place. We're still trying to figure out who that is right now for the current Bears, but I think you hear it from some of them, even like Jalen Johnson. It took him a while to get on board with this. Now he's fully on board with it. He's comfortable with it. He likes where this team is headed. He likes the defense. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think that they probably also feel like there's more. You're right. Those guys have to emerge. Who those leaders end up being, and there's still questions like, is Roquan Smith here a year from now? That needs to be answered at some point. Not now. It's all about ball, as he said today. David Montgomery is another one. That needs to be figured out in the future. But I also think that they feel pretty confident that these 15 or so rookies that are on the team right now, if 5 of those guys emerge as long-term leaders, that's going to go a long way in terms of continuing this culture and really having it established.
The identity of your team.
Ooh, there's that word.
Identity.
That is one good way to sum this up, Johns, is like, this team may only win 4 or 5 games. I think they're going to probably win more. But even if that ends up being the case, we know what their identity is now. We didn't know that the last 3 years. That's all we talked about. It'd be week 10 of the season. Matt Nagy, what's your identity? We're still trying to figure that out.
Mark Trestman, what's your identity? Well, I don't know. He didn't say that exactly, but you know what I mean?
He said kicking on second down.
Ouch. But they've been clear from the start. They've only strengthened what they've said through their actions on the field. Like, they know what they want to be, and they have a plan of how to get there. You're seeing that come to fruition in camp. I know it's the preseason. I know we shouldn't be too excited about going 3-0 in the preseason. But you see the identity, like, it's evolving. You see it coming to fruition here at Halas Hall.
Well, and I don't think people are excited just about being 3-0 in the I don't know. Are people actually excited about that?
Well, it's better than being 0-3.
I think they're more excited about just what they've seen, what we've talked about on this podcast constantly that has been so consistent since training camp started, and even going back more into the OTAs, is just they're doing things that make sense. They're paying attention to the little things, the details that Ryan just talked to us about a little bit with some of the drills and practices. And let's see how it all plays out, because there could still be 10 penalties in week 1 against the 49ers. That would surprise me. I think they're going to be, fundamentally sound.
Well, Nick Bosa is going to be quite the challenge for Braxton Jones. Let's just face reality here.
Yeah.
The 49ers are expected to have one of the best defenses in the league. That's the reality of it.
I also have a feeling Luke Getsy isn't going to leave Braxton Jones on an island too much against Nick Bosa. So
he's not going to have the same game plan the Bears used to have against the Cleveland Browns and against some other big dogs, as Ryan Poles would say.
I maybe I'm wrong. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but based on everything we've seen, I think that's...
I think my final impression of everything, now that, like, to wrap up the preseason, to wrap up training camp, I am more positive about the direction of this team, even some of the talent on this team, as I was when camp opened.
Okay.
It's young players standing out right away. It's like, it's the eye test for Brisker. It's the eye test for Gordon. It's the eye test for Velus Jones Jr., even though he hasn't played that much. It's Braxton Jones evolving into a potential left tackle. It's them finding a potential answer at right guard with a former second-round pick in Teven Jenkins. Those are reasons for positivity that weren't there when camp opened. And that in itself, I think, is my most general takeaway of what's unfolded here at Halas Hall throughout training camp and the preseason.
You feel good about it. You do. There seems to be steps towards answers at
And then Fields throwing 3 touchdowns against the Browns. That's something.
Yeah.
Again, it's better than the opposite.
Yeah. It's better. It's much better than the opposite, which we've seen at times. So, and I think that they feel, as you heard, one of the more important things I think Ryan said about Fields is just how they could see the flashes on film last year, but they got to get more consistency. And I think as each week went along in camp, you saw more consistency.
Yeah.
Wasn't always perfect. Wasn't perfect against the Browns. There were some misreads in that game. But you see just it's getting closer to consistent than it certainly was last year. It's interesting. This is a what many people I think painted back in the winter as being like a lost year. Like, do the Bears even matter this year? I think they're going to be an interesting football team.
Yes.
I think that they're going to be in games. I think we're going to spend a lot of Mondays, even after losses, actually pointing out positives instead of it just being doom and gloom like it usually is on Bears Monday.
I think we could talk ourselves into 7 or 8 wins.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine. They're not one of the worst teams in the NFL as others would contend.
No.
I don't think that's true.
Well, and I felt that way in the summer, but everything I've seen in camp in the preseason has just made me feel better about that thought, is another way to look at it. No one's saying they're going to the playoffs. No one's saying but I would be shocked if they're picking in the top 3 of the NFL draft in April.
There would be a lot of things that have gone wrong if that's the case.
Most important of which is the quarterback. And you don't want that to happen. So people who root for that, I will never understand that logic. Not with this team, not with this quarterback that they have here. All right. Any final thoughts?
No, never.
Never. Yeah, still 0 for 600 or so on that.
Had some.
Maybe. You don't want any sneaking any high school football
yes.
talk?
Yes, I do. Yes.
I'm getting heckled in the building here.
7,500. You were just heckled.
I was just heckled.
You have Lake Forest.
Yes.
At Carmel.
Which the Bears, I don't know if you know this, are located in Lake Forest. So there's some ties.
Meanwhile, the alma mater of myself and the McCaskey family.
It's a big game.
Notre Dame versus St. Pat's, both ranked for the first time in seemingly forever.
Wait, I thought you went St. Pat's.
No. Oh, easy there. They're sold out. 7,500 tickets, I hear.
That's going to be a fun one.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a fun one.
That's going to be
Go
fun.
Dons.
That's good to see that rivalry.
It's back.
Going strong. I can't believe it.
Well, they haven't played in a few years.
I know. They haven't played in a few years.
That's part of it. They're both pretty good. They're both ranked by the Chicago Sun-Times. Our friend Michael O'Brien, he's covering the game. Mm-hmm. He's going on the Notre Dame broadcast. That'll be on YouTube.
Oh.
It's a big deal on the northwest side of
Chicago.
Chicago.
By the way, and I gave these guys a shout out last year. Those kids at Notre Dame do an amazing job with the broadcast.
Yes, they do.
They have a club, and I've told them if they ever want some help or anything, I'm happy, but I don't think they need it.
They're getting better. They got graphics now.
It looks good.
Sponsors?
It looks good. It's very impressive. But St. Pat's has the opportunity to hand both of our alma mater's losses within the first 2 seasons.
They got you.
Yeah, they got Ignatius last week. Yeah, I love it. Another Friday night of high school football. All right. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the Ryan Poles conversation. We thank him and the Bears for making it happen again. We got to get out of here. Follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. You could read me at allchgo.com. Him on The Athletic, theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns. You guys got another deal going on right now. You always have deals.
A lot of deals.
Good time to sign up.
Got some big stuff coming up next week.
We also have another special episode coming early next week. You have some big stuff coming on The Athletic next week. And then by Thursday, we're jumping in with our first preview episode of the season.
Time.
Can't wait.
Told you, it comes fast.
All right. So enjoy Labor Day weekend. Be safe. And yes, we will have another special episode for you, I think, coming out Tuesday. So stay tuned for that. Talk to you next week.
See ya.
Pool reporter Adam Hoge. Hoge. His interview with referee Tony Correnti.